absence makes the heart grow fonder, and this statement definitely applies to how WWE fans feel whenever a star disappears from their screen for an extended spell. Although these breaks from television are usually unexpected and tend to come about due to injury or a star suddenly parting ways with the company, more often than not, these spells away turn out to be a blessing in disguise. Once an injured or exiled performer is finally given the green light to step back into the company's squared circle, these returning stars are usually given a hero's welcome and a much-needed push off the back of their highly anticipated comeback. However, not every absent wrestler is given the same treatment upon their return, and on more than a few occasions, WWE have completely cocked up what should have been a truly triumphant re-emergence. I'm Gareth from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 WWE returns that were completely wasted. Number 10, Mickie James. Unfortunately, when it came to six-time women's champion Mickie James's long-awaited comeback earlier this year, WWE decided to waste what could have been a memorable first appearance back on Monday Night Raw in 14 months by having the legend appear in an awkward backstage segment with social media influencers Lana and Natalya. If that wasn't enough, the star was then humiliated in her official in-ring return as the audience's attention was pulled away from James and Natalya's bout to focus on a verbal back and forth between Seth Rollins and Samoa Joe at ringside. Oh, and James would lose said match by countout. What could have been an epic return for the former Knockouts champion has quickly turned into a deeply disappointing affair. But it surely can't get any worse, right? Number 9, Mustafa Ali. For the longest time, it looked like Mustafa Ali was about to be revealed as Friday Night SmackDown's mysterious hacker. However, once Ali was surprisingly moved over to Raw in July of this year, the distinct gimmick was reportedly scrapped. To be fair, things got off to a decent start when Ali was revealed as Ricochet and Cedric Alexander's surprise partner for a match against the Hurt Business during his Raw return in July, with the team coming away with the victory. In typical WWE fashion, however, it wasn't long before the returning star was on the losing side, as he was forced to tap out by the almighty Lashley on the following edition of The Red Show. After losing a six-man rematch against the Hurt Business a few weeks later, Ali was then suddenly taken off Raw and has spent most of his time battling against his peers on Main Event ever since. It's not too late to put him back in a hoodie and have him sieve through your security footage, Vince. Honest. Number 8, Chris Jericho. Over the years, current AEW star Chris Jericho has had more than a few grand returns to Vince McMahon's company. However, not all of his comebacks have been equally successful. One particularly poor re-emergence went down at the 2015 Night of Champions pay-per-view, when Jericho was revealed as Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose's surprise partner. Even though it's always awesome to see Y2J, Jericho being revealed as the star to help Reigns and Ambrose overcome the Wyatt family, and their newest hulking member Braun Strowman felt like a bit of an odd choice. Jericho would eventually be choked out by Strowman, costing his team the match, and was then off television until early 2016. Bringing the veteran back to be cannon fodder for one night just felt like a huge waste of such a recognizable face, who likely could have added something interesting to the developing Wyatt family versus two halves of the Shield storyline. By the time he made his proper return to weekly television, this pointless one-off appearance had been all but forgotten. Number 7, Kevin Owens. Post-breakup with Chris Jericho, the Kevin Owens character seemed to lack direction. A feud with Shane McMahon, which eventually saw him join forces with old pal Sami Zayn, still didn't fully help re-establish Owens as a must-see main eventer. So it was something of a blessing in disguise when he eventually had to undergo surgery on both of his knees in October 2018. This forced absence would give Owens a chance to get over being bullied by Braun Strowman for months on Raw, and eventually return as the big deal he undoubtedly is on his day. However, his day was most definitely not midway through Kofi Kingston and Daniel Bryan's fantastic WWE Championship program coming into WrestleMania 35. But WWE still stupidly decided to throw KO into the mix, and he ultimately ended up losing to Bryan in a triple threat match, which also involved a returning Mustafa Ali at Fastlane 2019, before being left matchless at Mania. If he'd burst onto the scene again a few weeks after 2019 Show of Shows and immediately reclaimed his big red belt or possibly even the WWE Championship, who knows where KO would be today. Not fighting in Raw Underground, I can tell you that much. Number 6, Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn is another star who wasn't exactly pushed in the right direction after he made his highly anticipated return from injury in 2019. Zayn had injured both of his rotator cuffs, and this meant he required double shoulder surgery before he could even think about stepping back in the ring again. So fans were understandably quite happy to see the former NXT champion when he finally popped up on the post-Mania 35 episode of Monday Night Raw, after spending nearly 10 months on the shelf. Yet, instead of leading into the swell of support for the returning crowd favorite, WWE decided to let Zayn lose to Intercontinental Champion Finn Balor, and then have the star tear into the toxic fanbase that had been cheering him all night. Before long, Zayn felt like just another piece of the furniture, and after only managing to score 1 win in 16 singles matches, he eventually moved over to SmackDown to aid IC champion Shinsuke Nakamura as his heelish manager. Thankfully, his most recent comeback has already been a marked improvement on that 2019 return. Number 5, Seth Rollins. 2019 was a funny old time in the world of WWE. Then WWE champion Seth Rollins had gone down injured with a tore MCL, ACL, and medial meniscus in his knee towards the end of the previous year. So WWE were forced to think on their feet and shifted their focus towards Roman Reigns as their top guy instead. Whilst Roman's empire was being built to the sound of deafening boos, Rollins was slowly recuperating behind the scenes. The architect would then dramatically show up at Extreme Rules, 6 months after being sidelined, and attack the star who now carried the belt he never lost. As you'd expect, Rollins' return was met with rapturous applause, and he was now easily the most over face in the company. So, what did WWE do? One night later, Rollins was told to walk down to the ring and tell everyone that he didn't need those cheering his name to win back his belt. In just a few short moments, the company completely squandered what could have been one of the most popular organic babyface characters in years, only to eventually turn him face anyway a few months later when all this return momentum was lost. Number 4, Alberto Del Rio. Believe it or not, there was a time when the sight of Alberto Del Rio walking down a WWE ramp was actually quite exciting. One of these very rare instances went down at Hell in a Cell in 2015, when the returning Mexican star was shockingly revealed as United States champion John Cena's next challenger. Cena had successfully defended the belt on multiple occasions since defeating Rusev for it at WrestleMania 31. Hell, the only way Seth Rollins could wrestle it away from him was to get Jon Stewart involved at SummerSlam, and even then Cena won it back at the next pay-per-view. So you can imagine how surprised WWE fans were when Del Rio only went and knocked off Super Cena for the US strap on his first night back in the company after a year away. Sadly though, that was about as compelling as his return and subsequent last run in WWE got. By September of 2016, less than a year since returning, Del Rio was no longer with the company, and what was finally looking like an interesting spell for the former WWE champion soon devolved into nothing more than a forgetful, typical WWE foreign heel run. We lost the Cena Open Challenge for this! Number 3, Luke Harper. Around April 2019, the long underappreciated Luke Harper finally decided he wanted a change and requested his release from WWE. However, Vince McMahon denied his request and added an extra 6 months to his contract due to the time he'd spent on the sidelines injured. With his original deal due to expire in November, you sensed WWE would go out of their way to give Harper a decent push at some point in an attempt to entice him into re-signing. In the end, Harper finally popped back up on WWE television in September, attacking Roman Reigns during his battle with Eric Rowan at Clash of Champions, and then jumping Daniel Bryan on the next episode of SmackDown. A top-level feud with the big dog and a newly faced D-Bry? What's not to like, I tell ya? Well, everything as it goes. Rowan and Harper were decisively beaten by the pair at Hell in a Cell, and Rowan was then moved to Raw in the 2019 draft. Harper was soon left without a partner, storyline, or reason to stay in McMahon's company, and he was finally granted his release in December Sadly, Harper's intriguing comeback was quickly wasted, but Mr. Brody Lee moved on to bigger and better things. Number 2, Naomi. If ever you needed a reminder of just how goddamn over former SmackDown Women's Champion Naomi actually is, go back and watch a surprise entrance during this year's Women's Royal Rumble match. After this sort of reaction, it would have probably made sense to give Naomi a nice big push on Friday Night SmackDown as she returned to our screens full time. However, outside of a rushed program with Bayley and forgettable shot at her SmackDown Women's Championship at Super Showdown, all that natural momentum was pretty much forgotten about by the time we hit WrestleMania 36. Naomi instead found herself slotted into a thrown-together 5-way for Bayley's title, but was eliminated second on the night. A couple of months later though, it did seem like WWE were finally about to pull the trigger on the super popular star, after a social media trend by the name of Naomi Deserves Better took over Twitter. But Vince McMahon has again chosen to leave money on the table by keeping Naomi off television time and time again in recent weeks. Number 1, Bobby Lashley. 2 years ago, Bobby Lashley was quite rightly being talked about as the star who could realistically return home to WWE and give former UFC champion Brock Lesnar a run for his money. So when the Dominator's music finally hit on the Raw after WrestleMania 34, fans' minds quickly went into overdrive as they fantasy booked countless dream matches against the likes of Lesnar, Roman Reigns, Braun Strowman, Finn Balor, and many, many more. Yet in almost record speed, WWE managed to make a returning Lashley feel about as special as a lightly salted packet of crisps. Throwing the no-nonsense physical specimen into one of the worst feuds in recent WWE history with Sami Zayn definitely didn't help his cause. But things didn't exactly get much better in the weeks following this mess. After ultimately losing his mini-feud with Roman Reigns, a now-heel Lashley joined forces with Lio Rush, and firmly cemented himself as just another big nasty WWE bad guy who traded wins and losses with anyone he faced in the mid-card. Let's just hope his recent Hurt Business alliance leads to a serious, consistent main event push in the near future. And that's our list. Know of any other WWE returns that were completely wasted? Let us know all about them in the comment section below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button. Also, be sure to head on over to whatculture.com and click on some more awesome articles just like the one this video is based on. I've been Gareth from What Culture Wrestling. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm sure I'll see you very, very soon.